Hey, thanks for that follow. Make Earthbound great again? That's an interesting name, my dude. I haven't played much Earthbound, but it's a series I definitely want to go back and revisit. And oh, another follow? Holy crap, guys, this is crazy. I've never had such a full house. I really appreciate the support. Damn, 200 viewers? This is overwhelming. Make sure you guys also check out the official page for the Armitage Times. We've got a great team of writers and tech geeks that run a column to keep you guys up to date on the latest. What's with all these viewers? Who's hosting me right now? Sorry, the Twitch chat is moving so fast. I keep seeing something about a host? Who was it? Trying to keep up with the now frenzied chat messages in my stream was quite a task. Not that I wasn't appreciative, I was definitely having fun, but man, I felt an almost childlike glee at all the attention. A pleasure that was really new to me. It was so surreal, you know, entertaining so many people, a wallflower like me. But at the same time, at the heart of the frantic swirling in my head, trying to keep up with everything going on, I was sincerely content, I gotta say. In such a controlled environment, the relative reclusivity of my apartment, dealing with one of the few subjects, video games, that I can go on about for hours, it made that mental image of standing on a hypothetical stage in front of hundreds of strangers whose focus is 100% on me not so frightening. Now the real question is, though, to whom do I owe thanks for such a fortuitous night? I continue to try to scan through the sea of messages for my mysterious host. Guys, these follows just keep coming in. I can barely thank all of you. Oh, Chief Sensei, what's up, dude? Yeah, this game is a newer MOBA out right now by Epic Games called Paragon. What's it similar to? The closest comparison I have is probably Smite, but it's got a pretty unique card system and oh yeah, for sure. I can totally show you guys some more Zinx gameplay. Let me just go ahead and abruptly, in the barrage of text and usernames on my Twitch channel, my eyes were immediately drawn to a user by the name of H5 Gaming, preceded by that prestigious badge identifying a verified streamer, one who is officially partnered with Twitch. I was, for lack of a better word, stunned. This was all happening so fast. Now partnered streamers were stopping by to check out my chat? Come to think of it, their channel name sounded vaguely familiar. And before I could audibly express the thoughts in my head, the chat exploded with recognition and PogChamp emote spam for the user. They pointed out that not only were they the source of my surge of viewers through their current hosting of my channel, but were also a prominent MOBA esports team. The name definitely rung a bell now. H5? Damn, you guys are here? Oh, I remember you guys. Some of my team did an interview with you guys a few months ago for, that's right, your success in the summer split for League of Legends. You guys had a great showing. Oh, and it must be pretty sick being sponsored by Bennett Inc. too. My conversation with H5, who, on a side note, I wasn't sure who on the team I was actually speaking to at the time, or if they were all watching and sort of commenting as one with that username, continued for a good 20 minutes or so in the stream. They did remember that previous interview. In fact, that's partially how they found me. They expressed an interest in trying out Paragon, possibly as a game to play on the side in their off days from League, and I offered to hook them up with some closed beta keys to get early access. I figured it was the least I could do in return for their generous host, but they upped the ante on me. They proposed to have a member of their team play with me off stream personally. I explained the game and play with them for a few hours, and they would see firsthand if the game had competitive staying potential or not. Now, this is quite an opportunity I was presented with. I mean, I'd be a fool not to take it, you know? I mean, forming a good business relationship with not only an esports team, but a corporation like Bennett Inc. by proxy? That could only reap good benefits. Needless to say, I agreed without a second thought, and after setting up a date and time to meet up, the deal was complete. After the stream that night, so much adrenaline and just a general sense of disbelief was coursing through my body. Lying in my bed, I did have a brief spout of second thoughts though, tossing and turning, wondering how this was all really happening to me. Was I really going to be dealing with the real H5? And if so, would I just screw it all up? What if No. I had to stop myself. Overthinking, as usual. Before drifting off to sleep fully, I thought I saw a brief flash of light from my computer monitor, but when I turned to face it, nothing. I shrugged and retired for the evening.
The Vastaya. I first became acquainted with the chimeric creatures known as the Vastaya upon landing on the fertile shores of Ionia. There I had hoped I would find a cure for a uniquely Piltovian malady known as the doldrums, a soft boredom for the ins and outs of everyday life in the dependably shining city of Progress, where I make my living as an author of some renown. Within Ionia's soft and magical bosom, a bosom generally unexplored by cartographers who were not born upon its vast shores, I endeavored to find something utterly beyond my scope of expertise. Something wondrous and magical and beautiful and terrifying. Once I discovered the Vastaya, I knew I had found that which I sought. I met my first Vastayan creature in the dead of night, as it rummaged through my camp for something it could stuff down its gullet. Though it nearly sprinted away in fear upon my waking, a handful of sweet cakes and the sonorous delivery of a soothing bedtime melody, taught to me by my mother — I'm a soprano, by the way, and thus uniquely well equipped to serenade others with songs of relaxation — convinced it to stay a while in my camp. Though it walked on two legs like a human, its features were a chimeric combination of several other creatures I had seen either in books or on my myriad travels. It had the long whiskers and pointed nose of a cat, the scales of a snake all over its body, and the physical strength of a bilge-watrian salt beast, which I discovered when, upon finishing his sweet cakes, the creature lifted me above his head with the same effort I might expend to scratch my nose, and held me aloft until it determined I was not hiding more candies in my bedroll. The creature fled into the darkness shortly thereafter, and I knew what I had to do. I resolved to learn more about these Vastaya, as the locals refer to them. What follows are my notes on the varieties of Vastaya I encountered in my travels across the mysterious continent. What are the Vastaya? Were I to hypothesize about the origins of these beings, in being a learned gentleman of the physical sciences, I consider myself more than qualified to do so. I would theorize that the Vastaya are not an individual species, but a taxonomic classification more on par with a larger order or a phylum. Simply put, while many Vastaya look similar to one another, as I discovered after following the cat-snake-ape boy back to his village and being rudely chased away by his identically hybridized brethren. Presumably they had confused me for some sort of nefarious spy or apex predator, which explains why they followed me back to my camp and subsequently relieved me of my foodstuffs. The different tribes and familial groupings often look and act in drastically dissimilar ways. Days after my encounter with the Vastaya, by following the Whispering River, so named by myself because it was infuriatingly loud, and like many sophisticates, I have a penchant for irony. Near their village, and knowing others would certainly be drawn to such a water source, discovered an entirely different tribe. These Vastaya had the squeezable, furry faces of otters, but the lower girth of seals. After I unsuccessfully attempted to give them my glasses as a peace offering, many of the creatures carried packs full of knickknacks and shiny bits and bobs. Perhaps they were a mercantile society. I began an impromptu, I come in peace and will do you no harm interpretive dance. This particular jig was all about knee placement, and my patellas are positively pristine, which inspired my companions to take me in and feed me a warm supper of a meal I can only describe as slightly unraw, not quite fish. Though they said not a word while I performed my ritualistic gyrations, they later revealed, upon politely requesting I pass them a cup of yellowish powder that smelled of salt and fire, that they spoke my language fluently. Their various dialects and colloquialisms were unfamiliar to me, but I could, with very little effort, understand exactly what they said. As hungry for knowledge as I had previously been for food, I hurriedly queried them about the history of their kind. I learned that the Vastaya's origins could be traced back long, long ago, to a hidden corner of Ionia where a group of humans fled to escape the myriad horrors of the Great Void War, a subject upon which I have written numerous tomes, all of which can be found at the better Piltovian booksellers for more than reasonable prices. These refugees came into contact with a tribe of intelligent, shape-shifting creatures who were greatly in tune with Ionia's natural magics. The pairing of these two groups produced the creatures I eventually learned to refer to as Vastaya. Over time, the offspring of these pairings settled into a variety of regions, and therefore adopted diverse forms, from the winged humanoids of Ionia or the sporadically limbed sand shufflers of Shurima, to the Frojordian scaled manatee with a look of perpetual discomfort on his face. I wished to stay and ask more of the otter folk, but one of my questions seemed to cause great offense, and I was unceremoniously ejected from the village and the creature's good graces in one fell swoop. My question, for those looking to avoid the same mistake, regarded whether the pairing of the two species was purely magical or more, shall we say, physical in nature. More thoughts on the Vastaya. Relieved to both my supplies and my calm, but never my thirst for adventure, I again struck out in a different direction with nothing to protect me save my gumption and multi-syllabic vocabulary. Months passed as I availed myself of Ionia's plentiful fruits and vegetables, picking them from the ground and trees as easily as one might procure an item from a stall in the boundary markets. I marked time only by the rising and setting of the sun, and happily forgot all those cumbersome Piltovian habits to which I had become accustomed. To wit, after many days spent ambling across Ionia, I had developed something of a stench. I paused, disrobed, after checking to make sure I was alone. A gentleman never forces his own nudity upon others. And stepped into a nearby lake that smelled of berries and grass. It was there that I saw the most wondrous thing I had ever seen in my entire life, and will ever see should I live to be 1,000. Far more human than any Vastaya I had yet seen, this creature, bathing on the opposite shore, had the ears and tails of a fox, but she was unclothed. And I shall leave my descriptions vague, so as not to offend my younger or more sensitive readers, and otherwise very, very much like a female human. I caught but a glimpse of her as I soaked in the pond, my mouth agape, rivulets of water streaming down my gaunt frame as I attempted to come up with the perfect words of greeting. Mayhaps I would introduce myself as a writer of some renown, quoting her some of my more effusive reviews. Or I might serenade her with one of the many romantic ballads I had composed and memorized for situations such as this. Soon, however, a rustling in the brush behind me gave me a start. I turned to confront the rustling out of instinct, but with no threat brave enough to show itself, I turned back to find the glorious foxwoman was gone, leaving me with nothing but questions. The first few bars to "Oh my love, my dream, my prospective bedfellow" bouncing around in my head, and a decidedly embarrassed look on my face. The rustler whom I was determined to beat into bloody unconsciousness for scaring the love of my life away turned out to be a human merchant from a distant village who specialized in selling ginger fruit, an apparent delicacy. I chose not to taste as I was uncertain I'd resist the temptation to smash one into his smiling face. Shy, for this was his name, chastised me for bathing in the pond, informing me that it and the fox woman, who was sometimes known to bathe there, would be hazardous to my health. I informed him that sneaking up on naked, enamored men would be far more hazardous to his, but he merely laughed. After I dressed, the merchant agreed to lead me back to human civilization and answer a few of my questions in exchange for my hat. Jean Rose haberdashery retail price 53 gears. He informed me that his family had known of the strange woman for generations, that she, like the other Vastaya, have far longer lives than we humans. Some have been said to live for thousands of years, while others, rumors and legends say, might well be immortal. It was Shy who informed me of Ionia's name for these creatures. Up until this point, I had referred to them as phantasma, until the merchant scoffed at my nomenclature. I have retroactively changed all mentions of phantasma to Vastaya purely out of cultural empathy, as my vocabulary is matched only by my humility. We walked together for several days. Occasionally, he would stop and sniff the air like a starved bloodhound. When I asked him to explain his behavior, he would merely smile and inform me that he was looking for treasures. Though I found his vague demeanor a very special flavor of infuriating, his dog-like sniffing led me to a thought which I immediately shared with him. If Vastaya were the amalgamation of humans and ancient shape-shifting ancestors, then what would happen if that blood were to become extremely diluted through reproductive diaspora? What if, say, one had Vastayan blood, but not quite enough to take chimeric animalian form? What would happen? It was then that he stopped sniffing and his eyes widened. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "Well, they'd be able to change their shape, wouldn't they? Before the bastard turned into a pig and unearthed a silk truffle." As utterly shocked as I was to meet a shapeshifter, to have what's more met 3 different varieties of Vastaya in only a few months is beyond lucky, even for a deserved scholar such as myself. I couldn't help but note, however, that transforming Pigman was a considerable step down from voluptuous fox woman. At this rate, the next Vastayan creature I see could likely resemble a walking roach. A conclusion. I spent the last several months scouring Ionia for any and all information that I could collect on the various Vastaya species in an attempt to create an all-encompassing taxonomic guide to Runeterra and its fauna. Though I have accumulated an incredible amount of information on the Vastaya, there is much left to be discovered. I suspect that in limiting my search to Ionia, I have uncovered a mere fraction of the overall diversity to be found within this classification. Still, for now, it is time to move on. I have merely opened the door on Vastaya, and it will be the job of another journalist to step through it. Today I draw my attention to the other creatures of Runeterra whose stories have yet to be told. Those horrifying sentient weapons known as Darkin, the corrupting creatures of the void, those elusive fey creatures of legend, the Yordles. These stories mustn't go untold, and on my word, I shall be the explorer to do it. Indeed, I may well be the only one who can.
You focus on the wrong shit. Why these niggas talk shit? I pull out my car, then I pull up to the stars, bitch. She wanna go far shit. I be on my Mars shit. You know I be soaring. They see me, I be scoring.